What is up, wonderful world of YouTube? Back for another episode of Philosophize. And today I want to talk to you about someone who's very important for my thinking, a foundational philosopher for me, really one who brought me into recognition of the tradition that that really resonates with me, and I think has a lot of important truths about it. And that's Henri L. Bergson. Okay. Now, Bergson was born in 1859, the same year as Darwin's Origin of Species was published, and as I'll come to talk about in later videos, he did a lot of work with evolution. His most popular book, the one that still gets remembered by most people if you mention his name, is L'Evolution Créatrice, or The Creative Evolution, or just Creative Evolution usually as it's put in English. Now, Bergson is usually referred to as a mystic, okay, or an irrationalist, a vitalist. These tend to kind of denote the same thing that his opponents, his philosophical opponents, kind of saw in him and really didn't like. And this is why if you are familiar with a lot of philosophers and you're not too familiar with Bergson, that's mainly why he got a bad name, because of a lot of people taking him to be an irrationalist or a mystic and saying that he was out there beyond the pale and you couldn't really engage with him in a useful way because his ideas were just too out there, too strange. I actually think a lot of that is wrong. I think a lot of it is starting to be proven wrong, and that's going to be my next video, is going to be dealing with some of his very controversial views, to give you guys a little bit of an insight. He called logic, he said our logic is preeminently the logic of solids. So that's a somewhat opaque statement, and in my next video I want to break that down for you guys so you guys can see where he's coming from and judge for yourself if you think he's really so crazy. I will say that there's modern science that's being done that is starting to resonate quite heavily with what he said, and a lot of these philosophers hail from America, and scientists hail from America, so they're in the more analytic tradition, and they're not too familiar with what the hell he's talking about. That's Moo. She likes to make an appearance every once in a while. I'm sure she'll be joining us for some of these videos. So why was he called an irrationalist? Well, like I said, he and I are process philosophers. So we believe that process is the basic force of the world, that becoming is the number one, at bottom, at base, is the thing that the rest of the universe grows out of. So I had a evolutionary cosmology. Cosmology just means like, how do I see the universe itself? I think that the universe itself evolves. It's not a static thing. It's always changing. It's always updating. Even the so-called laws of nature, I see it as that as well. And that comes from a guy who I mentioned in my introduction video, C.S. Peirce, who was the father of American pragmatism, and definitely had some pretty big influences on Bergson's development. And then Bergson reciprocally had a big influence not on C.S. Peirce. Peirce didn't really seem to like Bergson too much, but the other pragmatists, Dewey, James, and someone who was very much heavily influenced by the pragmatists and Bergson, Whitehead, who basically kind of canonized process philosophy as its own distinct branch. So one of the main people who really didn't like Bergson was Bertrand Russell. He took some great pains to criticize Bergson and say that Bergson really was a mystic and more of a poet philosopher, even though Bergson himself said that he was trying to find a metaphysics to suit science. So, on the one hand you have this atomistic philosopher who's very opposed to Bergson, saying, Bergson's just a mystic, he's crazy, he doesn't really have a good grounding in reality or in the scientific method. And then you have Bergson saying, no, I'm trying to rewrite metaphysics so that I can ground science in metaphysics, and I can give science, the metaphysics that it's always needed, you know, the substratum that would really help it to become the most truthful and the most grounded science that we could possibly do with. And even a lot of people and philosophers, even in the process tradition, who are very much into metaphysics and science, they kind of see Bergson as kind of a mystic. And so in my next video, I'm going to be talking about why he really wasn't a mystic and why he was maybe a lot more forward thinking than a lot of people give him credit for. So one of the main things we're going to be investigating through Bergson is something which is very difficult to understand: time. Now, what did Bergson say about time? Bergson thought that time was misunderstood by basically the entire Western tradition. He thought that they had replaced time with a sign for time. Now, what does he mean by this? Well, he means that time is usually represented as a line, right? And so, in between these two poles, this is a spatial way of representing time. And Bergson thinks that this is what most philosophers and what most scientists are talking about when they talk about time. Bergson thought this is not time. Okay, time is not a line. Time is not a spatial representation. Okay, time is completely disentangled from space. Whereas in Einstein, you have space-time. I think if Bergson was to put it in his own way, he would put it time-space. Because if anything, he thinks that the spatial dimensions are derivative of time. In fact, he doesn't think that time is even a dimension in the way that we talk about spatial dimensions. See, because time does things that the other dimensions of space don't do. For one, time has a direction. Okay, time always is moving forward. Well, the spatial dimensions don't have a direction. So this was big, and once you get down Bergson's understanding of time, the rest of his system kind of falls into place, and you can really get a handle on his philosophy through understanding how he thinks of time, or as he called it, durée, or in English, duration. I think there's something over that. So in my next video, I'm going to break down time, and then from breaking down time, we'll start to get into memory, his views about language, and really see how Bergson thinks about the world, and through that you'll get to see how I think about the world, and I'll give you some insights into a project I'm working on for helping Bergson remain relevant in the cognitive science and philosophical disciplines right now. So thanks for watching, and I will see you guys in the next video.